In fact, you tell me, how old were you when you came to this country, or you were born here?
Uh, so I immigrated to this country. I came here at the old age of 3 months old. So that's when I came to the United States. So, I tell everybody that I'm a proud immigrant. And when they ask, well, when did you come over to the country? When I tell them 3 months old, they're like, wait, as a baby? And I said, absolutely right.
So that means that your parents decided to emigrate from where?
Yeah. So basically, my father was here since the 70s, and he was a
Hmm.
factory worker here, worked at the dye houses right across from the Great Falls, was a proud union carrying card member, and he worked here for many years at the dye house, worked as a busboy, and did a lot of things here. And then when time for him came to get married, he went overseas. Married my mom, and what ended up happening was that there was an embassy issue with paperwork regarding the documentation to bring over a non-citizen or individual wife to over here. By then, my father was already a U.S. citizen, so he did the
Hmm.
paperwork. Took about a couple months delay. So instead of my mom being able to come here and then me being born here, what ended up happening was that I was born overseas. I'm considered my designation is a U.S. citizen born abroad. But because of that, I'm banned from ever becoming the president of the United States if I ever decided to do that.
Oh, okay. But I'm pretty sure there are a lot many other opportunities for you to aspire for and become whatever you want in this country, except for some constitutional limitations.
Absolutely.
Tell me about I'm pretty sure your father must have told you the stories of coming here. So what made him come here in early 70s? I'm assuming very few people came to this country, at least from that part of the world. And we were talking about the 70s. Was it still East Pakistan when he came, or it was already Bangladesh when he came here?
He's Pakistan when he came here, and then he did the passport documentation as he was still a green card holder for him to have the new updated Bangladesh passport. But then he surrendered it when he became a U.S. citizen. So,
Wow, that's
yeah,
quite a change. When he came the first time, probably he came on a Pakistani passport, and then he changed it to wherever in the new country came. So he got it changed to the new country. Wow, that's quite a change.
yeah, yeah,
What
really,
made him come here? What made him come to this country?
yeah. So basically it's the same immigrant story. It's the land of opportunity. So my father worked a variety of different jobs in East Pakistan. He worked in an oil rig, he worked in factories. And then when the opportunity came with his family members to be able to immigrate to America, he took that chance, knowing that America is a land of opportunity, that there is a country out there that, is not connected by blood, but by loyalty, by ideology, by the philosophy of what America is and what it is throughout the world. And that was one of the real reasons why he wanted to come to this country was just the opportunity to be a better person, to develop and grow.
But did he
My
ever share the actual story? What invited him to this country? What made him? I mean, I want to know the actual. You can say the process. Did he
Yeah.
receive an invitation from a company here, or was there some other process that he utilized to come here to this country?
Yeah, so pretty much, I'm very thankful of my extended family members. We were trying to build up the entire genealogy history tree, how many of our ancestors and family members came here. So it actually started a little before World War II. So our first family members actually came to America, and they came in with the under the British oil companies, and it docked over there in Harlem, New York. And then from there, a lot
Oh
of
my God!
individuals left the ship. So if you ever saw the book Bengali Harlem, and there's a picture of a lot of Bangladeshis at the time, they were called Pakistanis, but
Uh,
in a table, and I'll definitely send you the picture over in the book. And you do by family members sitting right next to the individual that actually joined the U.S. military. So they had integrated into Harlem, married Puerto Rican and African
Harlem
American
in New
lady.
York, or Paterson was called the Bengali Harlem.
Oh, New York.
Okay,
Yeah. So
that's
it,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, and I'll definitely send you over the link. It's done by this Bangladeshi professor. So she was doing a genealogy history of her own family, and then she found out that it wasn't in the 70s and 80s that they actually immigrated. Their initial families came here back in the 40s, 30s, and 40s. And
Oh wow!
yeah, so we have a lot. What
Never
ended
heard
up
of
happening
that.
was that
Never heard of
slowly,
that. And so we are talking about even before the partition of India and Pakistan. This is then it
yes,
was a British India at that time. Okay,
yeah.
wow.
So the East Indian Company did when the British Empire directly took over the East Indian Company and they basically banned them and absorbed them into the normal British government. They had Indian workers on the ships for the oil trade to go back and forth. The ship docked in Harlem in New York, and then the ship crew members were like, "Well, let's go on Liberty for a little bit," and they never ended up going back to the ship. But it was
Oh
the
wow.
Americans that lived in Harlem that really embraced them, helped them find apartments, jobs, and then ended up marrying into them as well. So there are small
So
traces
we are talking
left
about
of
we are talking about primarily African American.
and
mostly, or we are talking about the white Americans too?
So not as much from what I understand. And again, I'll send you the book and it has so many beautiful details. But it was really, at the time, unfortunately, there was a little bit of racism towards individuals that didn't look, upper Northern European. But it
Mm,
American and Hispanic communities that lived there that embraced the Indians that were coming in. At the time, Bengalis, but at the time, Indians. So they integrated
yeah.
really well society to the point that there isn't any traces or any historical, almost historical references
Mhm.
left. There was a large Bengali population of maybe about 100 to 300 sailors that integrated into the population there. And so there's a lot of African Americans and Hispanics that actually have Bengali lineage, but it's been so many years and decades they didn't realize. But this one a photo that's used, I'm not sure if you're able to simulcast if you go on your desktop, but you can see Bengali Harlem, and that photo is
Mhm.
believe was taken in the 40s or 50s. I gotta recollect, but it shows everybody having a banquet dinner. So the Bengali men, and then you see their African American and Hispanic wives that are all there too. So
That's
the Bengali
fascinating.
people have actually been there for a long time, but it wasn't only until recently when they started investigating and looking at all these pictures. So there was what was the East Indian Association, and then East Indian Bengali Association and stuff like that. So it's really marvelous. So
That's
20,
fascinating. It's fascinating.
20, 30 years later, right, our family members had already been in America, right? And then a little bit of connection kind of people disconnected as they do. 20, 30 years, your relatives win,
Of course.
hear anything back, thinking they probably died or some did try to communicate back with Bangladesh and were able to keep those lines of communication going, but a great
Mhm.
deal. And then when time came for my father and brother, they were like, now we have an opportunity. So they went through the immigration system to apply. It was a process that took a lot. It was a lot of paperwork, a lot of background checks, and they applied directly just to have an opportunity to come to America. So they won the lottery out of the quota,
Mm.
and then they were accepted. Very much settled in Paterson. Initially New York for a little bit, but then to Paterson. By the time they got to New York, the Bengali population that initially was there was no longer at least alive, or so much time had went by they didn't realize they had Bengali ancestors there. So they came to Paterson. My father was one of the first, along with his brother, to be here in the city of Paterson from the Bengali community.
So we are talking about now, what year are we talking about, when he came to Paterson?
Oh, in the 70s, so 1971, 1972.
So it means the Bengalis actually started living in Paterson in the 70s. So we are talking about almost, what, 55 years, 50, 60 years that they started settling in Paterson?
Yeah, and if you count the Bengali Harlem, it was even almost, we're talking about nearly 80 years. So that tells you how long our roots here have been here for quite some time.
Yeah,
My
and
father
and
is
I-
one
and
of
I can also tell Jackson Heights. I think is also one of the spots where there is a large concentration of Bengali immigrants. Is that?
Yeah, yes. Basically, New York around the Jackson Heights area, Harlem, what used to be Harlem,
Hmm.
and then Paterson,
Hmm.
Dearborn, Michigan, or Warren, Michigan, and then Virginia have the largest Bengali population. So Paterson's is number two after New York City. And my father was
That's.
one of the first individuals here. So that they did an honoring event at the council for some of the
Mhm.
British Americans who were here that were pioneers, and my father was one of them as one of the earliest. Pretty much, he was the third, second or third group that was here. That's
That's wonderful. That's quite fascinating. So let's fast forward a little bit. Then you come here. What year? Did you come here as a child, as a 3 year
so
old?
it would be pretty. Yeah, so pretty much, it would be came here in, I was born February of 1987, so I got here around April. So about April to June, I'm sorry, April to May of
Hmm.
87.
So you went to schools here in the city of Patterson. I'm
Oh yeah,
assuming.
grade schools. I was part of Paterson Public Schools half day kindergarten when they only had half day, and then they converted to a full day. I went to school number
Hmm.
15 up until the fifth grade, and then for sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, I went to school five, and then for high school, I went to Kennedy. So pretty much K to 12, my education was here.
So tell me about that time first. Growing up as a child, did you have mostly Bengali kids around you, or you had kids of all sorts around you?
So I lived in the east part of Paterson, around Broadway Avenue. So other than one
Okay.
only family that was there, which is close to school number 13 and school number 6, everyone was predominantly African American and then Hispanic. So all the neighborhood kids, other than one family, everybody was African American and Hispanic.
How was it like growing up, with people who were so different from you? Their culture, their food, their faith, everything's different. Did you make friends with them, or did you feel? Let's start with friendship. Did you make friends with them?
Oh, absolutely. The thing about living in Paterson, as I usually tell everybody, is that you have so much of a diverse community around you that you yourself don't really realize that you're a minority in the world. You're thinking like, oh, this is how the entire country must be. This is how the entire world must be. So that there's people from a variety of different backgrounds, different ethnic, different religions, and I never felt discriminated against, at least from amongst my own community, like neighbors and whatnot. And kids will be
Hmm.
kids, right? There's sometimes you might have some situations where they're doing racial slurs here and there, jokes and this and that.
Hmm.
Most part, I didn't feel as if I was an odd person out. Everybody in the neighborhood was the
But
same.
looking at you, I can tell that you probably that you grew up as a nerd. Is that true?
Absolutely. History Channel, Science Channel,
So were you, were
Legos.
you were you bullied for that, for being a nerd?
I think we were all bullied for being a nerd in school. Yeah, and at the time, School 13 in that area was considered one of the worst schools in the state. So it had lots of issues, lots of violence, drug violence, shootings, murders, rapes. But for the most part, I just kind of centered and focused myself just on academics. So going to school, joining the quiz bowl, stuff like that, which I
I mean,
wish we
you
would
did
quit.
that, but because I also raised three children here, right? And you're also raising your girls here. I could not, because originally when I came, we started from Clifton, not very far from where you are right now. Clifton was okay, but my children were exposed to some sort of a bullying, and I could not take it even for a few months. So immediately moved away from Clifton, and we moved all the way to Woodbridge, where they all grew up here. For the next 25, 30 years, we have lived in Woodbridge. And one of the prime motivators from moving out of that place was that I could, as an adult, probably I could resist and I could confront all sorts of pressures, but my children would not. How did your parents take up that pressure of seeing that we are raising a nerd child here, and they are still letting you go to that school and seeing you being different from others? And maybe when you did you ever come home crying as a
Yeah,
child?
yeah. I mean, school going to a school district or going to a school in an urban environment, right, is always going to be tough for anybody. Did we face some type of racial discrimination or religious discrimination? Of course. I think that's just part of the core. What I would say is that because my father himself, prior to marrying my mom, had married a Hispanic woman, so I have a half a Puerto Rican stepsister. And, my
Hmm.
various coworkers were African Americans, Hispanics, Italians, Polish, working at the factories. So his understanding was that it's a very multicultural environment. Back in the 70s, he was joking around that all the police officers were Irish, all the shop owners were Italian, that's how it was. And as we were growing up and we had, there was a sense, I think, that just before I was born, white flight had already taken place. As the post World War II era was taking place, people had already slowly left Paterson, but there were still some individuals left here that had European ancestry. And when we came
Hmm.
into when I growing up and whatnot and learning about different groups and whatnot, my father, right, always instilled in me the fact that he says that the people I worked with at the factory came from a variety of areas. If they're good people, bad people, it didn't relate to the fact of who they were ethnically or religiously. It was just who they are, character wise. So he always
Did
instilled in
they
me
did
this
they ever
sense.
tell you, for your safety, for your security? Because as a parent, I can see from their perspective, they would always worry. They would always be worried about your safety, walking to your school and coming back and all that. Did they ever give you specific advice as how to deal with situations where you feel insecure physically? Did they ever tell you any specific? Did they ever give you an advice, stay out of trouble and that kind of a
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
How
I
did
mean,
they tell you to deal with such
yeah.
situations?
Pretty much what my father and mother would always say is that try to just stick with good people around you. So don't hang out with a crowd that's going to be quote unquote too dangerous or character wise or morally bad. And that was really the only advice when we were living in the fourth ward, which was pretty again the very most difficult part of Paterson that has a lot of issues.
Were you
My
ever
parents would walk,
physically, or was there any ever a physical altercation with a group of people?
but I wouldn't say it was maybe racially motivated or anything like that. But fights were just normal. Being picked on. I wasn't sure if it was because
Okay.
of or was it because I was Bengali American, right?
And how would you respond? Did you just walk away, or you would fight back?
It would depend on the situation if I was outnumbered. But
So you were strategic, with your reaction and responses.
like, I would make a quick analysis. I'm like, I can only take on one. And I'm like, if there's two or three, right, it's going to be quite difficult. So, that's again being rough and tumble in the beginning where, you're being roughed up and stuff like that. And you didn't understand why. Was it sometimes because of racial discrimination? It could have been. Was it just because I was a nerd? It could
Yeah.
have been. Or was I, quote unquote, considered like the easiest target, right? It's not, it's impossible to determine. But at least I can say that there wasn't times where I kind of cowered completely or anything like that. I always figured out an appropriate response, which was like, okay, I got to
Listen,
fight them.
if you have survived Paterson, you can survive anywhere in the world now. Same, and likewise, you were raised by someone who probably was raised in Dhaka or Bangladesh. If he raised you like that, and you grew up in Paterson, you can go in and live anywhere in the world now.
I was joking around that when I went to Army boot camp, I was like, it's nothing compared to living in Paterson. So it's being screamed at, yelled
There
at, and
you
stuff
go.
like that.
And in fact, that was my next question. Fast forward again, very unusual. Not many people. Did you find too many Bengalis around you in the army when you joined the army, or
Well, lots of
Pakistanis, or Indians?
yeah, yeah, lots of desis actually. It seemed like in my unit specifically,
Really?
there was like five desis altogether, all of us, right? So one was Bengali, the other two were Indian, and the other one was Pakistani. So and that was
Wow, that's unusual.
well, my reserve unit was in Jersey City. So Jersey City had
Okay.
so there's like so people joining the Army Reserves, they're like, oh well, Jersey City, I'm close to Jersey City, I'll go there. So there was a lot of desis, and Jersey City has a lot of desis living there
Of
as it
course.
is.
Yeah.
Or at least
So
five,
so
there's
tell me,
five.
how was it like in that group? And I'm pretty sure you were only four, so now you're four in as one unit, right? Was there, were you all embraced as just like everybody else, or were you somehow discreetly, there was, all right, these people look slightly different from us? How does it work in the army ambiance, in the army environment? How does that work? Because I'm pretty sure the United States Army is emblematic of a cauldron of every nation on earth. You'll
Yeah,
find Chinese there, you'll find Koreans there, you'll find, Europeans there, you'll find your blacks there, Hispanics there, everybody. So how does that work, inside the army? How do they deal with those, I must say, that genetic dispensations of differences and all of that? How does that work in the army?
yeah, so I actually joined the Army right after I graduated from college. So a little bit of a different route, right? I got my bachelor's degree, and that was actually part of the agreement I made with my parents. So I wanted to do it right after high school. So their agreement was you're going to graduate college first, get your bachelor's degree, then you can join the military. So that's what I ended up doing. So I went into
But
boot camp
did they
about
agree? Did they agree easily for you to join the army, or there was some resistance from within the family?
very, very minute, nothing too much, because our historically our family has always like there's always been one from each immediate family that joined the military. So my, our the first
But
person in our
we're not
family.
talking about the U.S. Army. We're talking about probably, the armies back home. But
Oh no,
we're not
here.
talking about the U.S. Army. Was it okay for them?
Oh no, we're talking about the U.S. Army. Yeah. So we have
Oh,
members of our
really?
family that. Yeah. So the only person in our family that has died from war, well, at least in the American army and military, was from Vietnam. So, but he died basically towards the the end of the war. So he was from again the family that was all the way that came to Bengali Harlan, and so
Mm,
my cousin, who I think passed away about maybe 15 years before I was born, died in Vietnam, basically in one of the not the Tet Offensive, but one of the last battles they had, and that's where he died. So our family
mm.
member has been, other than the Space Force, pretty much the Air Force, Marines, Army, Marine Corps, Navy. We're pretty much everywhere, and so it is a bit of a
That's
tradition.
fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we do have family members that we can trace back all the way to the Sepoy Rebellion in colonial India.
Wow.
So we can't go too
Mm.
far back. Our family members were working historically, but prior to the British, they were working as like civil servants.
The actual partition movement for a separate homeland in the Indian subcontinent, actually, at that time, it started from Bangladesh. It didn't start, from the west part of, it started from East Pakistan or eastern part of India at that time. So the whole partition and the Bengali resistance movements, they are famous in the British expulsion from that part of the world. So tell me, now in the army, were you ever posted overseas, or you stayed here local most of the time?
Yeah, so basically throughout my entire contract, my unit had already been overseas to Iraq. So when I joined, they just left to Iraq. So then when I came to the unit, there was like you basically when you come back, you get another 5-year stabilization. So I never deployed overseas with my unit, but the hope was I was going to get one deployment under my belt. But then as I got closer to the end of my contract, by then
And how does
I was
that
already.
help? If you have a deployment, how does that help in your career or whatever?
Oh, it's almost like the Ernest Hemingway kind of thing, where you have an opportunity to
Oh, okay.
experience combat and stuff, right? So I think it's just more of a like be a bravado to say I've been to combat. You train and you prepare, and then you don't get a chance to actually execute. All that training to actually use it in real world practices.
So now let's say, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, because when we came here into this country around 2000 and so, um, 2001 comes and 9/11 happens, right? And and that was actually one of the reasons that we were kind of marked or singled out when we started our lives here in the United States from Clifton. This guy next door, he was a little cuckoo, and we were all grouped, as related to, the people 9/11. So everyone was there. So I'm assuming it's around the same time that you were in the army, right?
So I was a freshman in high
In
school in 2000.
2001 or maybe a little later.
Yeah, so I was a
Say it
freshman
again.
in high school. I was a freshman in Kennedy in 2001.
Okay, so it means you joined the army probably in 2005, 2000,
2009. So I graduated from high school in
2009.
2005. And I graduated
Okay.
from the army, graduated from college in 2009.
Oh, okay. So you mean because I wanted to see actually what went on with the different minority groups within the army while this was happening overseas. The Afghan war and the Iraq war, like here in the United States. And you know that there were all sorts of oversight on mosques, on all kinds of gatherings wherever the Muslim communities, even in the city of Paterson, there was an additional set of eyes from the U.S. government on these communities. Some were impacted, some were just. But everyone was under some sort of a watch. So, I mean, I just wanted to see if there was any kind of a watch going on inside the military also on
Well,
minorities during that time.
yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much by then in 2009, right? 8 years had gone on since 9/11. So was there a little bit of a stigma? Yeah, I would say that. Even there was a large portion of Muslims that I saw at boot camp, not like
Mm,
Arabs, Turkish, and whatnot. They were signing in to be translators for the army to speak Arabic. But I
yeah.
did know that while I was in high school, the conversation was the fact that the 9/11 hijackers, about 3 or 4 of them, lived here in Paterson. So they basically were next to West Broadway, which was where Old School 14 was. They lived in that apartment for a little bit. So they actually went to the
Hmm.
mosque, yeah, to the big mosque in downtown. Um, you know, as far as I can tell, nobody really noticed them. They seemed very quiet. I don't think I've ever saw them. Right? There's a possibility that maybe we went to prayer at the same time when they did. But you don't recognize anybody.
Wow.
Even looking at the, I don't remember.
Anyway, I think that incident, unfortunately, is so mired is shrouded in some sort of quick judgment and secrecy that until today, people like Tucker Carlson, they've started asking questions about the investigation that went into that. So we don't know. We don't have access to the inside information. We know whatever we are told, through the media, and that's the information we have, and that's what we go by. So
Yeah,
let's moving forward now. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so I tend to tell people that Islam has been relatively treated as this foreign religion, and when I always do this whenever I have any questions either from students or regular individuals that ask me, I always tell them like this that the religion itself is a evolution from Judaism and Christianity. It started in the same region that is considered the Holy Land, and that Islam came to America potentially in the 1600s. Heck, even the second president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, I'm sorry, the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, had a copy of the Quran as well. And in his private library, he has a copy of the Quran. So he understood Islam.
Well, I didn't know
Islam is
that.
who,
I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that.
And then, yeah, so my undergrad's in history, so I love history. That's why, but,
That's
when you do it,
fascinating. I didn't know that.
yeah, when you review it, that potentially Islam was here through the slave trade. So in around the 1600s, a lot of the captured slaves were Muslim, not a lot, but there was a portion that were Muslim. So Islam has been here for a while. And so when they say it's a foreign religion, it's so different, I just point back to the map where it started from, and then I point to the fact that the cultural legacy of Islam is even found in Spain, when it used to be called
Yeah, of
what
course.
is it? Yeah, so it's a long
Andalusia.
history.
Andalusia.
Yes, and it's a long history. So when you have people from America here that question and say like, well, you're such a foreign religion and we don't understand you, I tell them that
I
Islamic,
mean, every religion is a foreign religion here. And by the way, I mean, just, because you are a history fan, just to add to that, people who were brought into this country, the African Americans who came from the Western African countries, these Western African countries, in the 1600s and 1700s, when they were brought here as slaves, those countries were Muslim countries. The majority religion of those nations was Islam. And when they came here, they were civilized. They were given a new religion because as a slave, your religion is what your master tells you. That's your religion. So they came here as Muslims, but during their voyage across the Atlantic, they gave up their god and they took up the new god. And by the time they were sold here, the masters gave them their new religion. They also gave them their new churches and the new pastors. All right, this is your new religion. So that's how they became devout Christians.
Yeah, and history is funny, and I always tell individuals that when you're studying it, right, it's important to study it in a very neutral manner because you need to see every point. And if you're studying history just to kind of reinforce your own personal beliefs, it's not going to work out. History is complicated,
Of
and
course,
it is so different. But and history is part of Paterson. This city itself has a long tradition of a variety of different
of
communities
course.
coming here, and it's historically relevant throughout for American, if not world history.
Yeah. So now, again, fast forward now. At some point, I know that you become an educator with the Patterson Public Schools, and during that time, you also happened to have a short stint as a city council member. How did that come about? I mean,
Yes.
from an educator, who gave you the idea? Because the teachers are supposed to be focusing on education. What
So
motivated
yeah,
you to go for city council, which is politics
yeah,
to me? I mean, you might say
yeah. So
service,
so
but
pretty
tell
much.
me, so if it's what motivated you?
Yeah, so, I go back to 2020, and,
Uh-huh.
what ended up happening was that I've been doing a variety of different community initiatives, programs inside the school district, outside the school district. So when the opportunity came, there was a tie that happened in the election in the second ward. So the other council members said, "Okay, until the tie's figured out, we're gonna do another election, but we can't have either candidate, be in that position." So what they ended up deciding was that they said, "Okay, we're gonna reach out to Gilman and ask, would he like to be councilman, temporarily, or if he wants to run, he can, but we wanna give him the shot." So they asked me, and I initially refused. And I said, "I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna do politics at all." And then, they give me a call back again, and I said, "Okay, can I think about it a little bit?" And, long story short, what motivated me to say yes was the fact that I've read, you read all these political science books, philosophies. You read everything from Marcus Aurelius all the way to Nikolai Tesla's understanding of governance. You go back to Machiavelli, to Sun Tzu, and you go back to all these documentations about how to be, what it takes to make proper government, effective government. And I really, really am a big, big believer in Marcus Aurelius. I love his his diary meditations. So I was saying
What
to
what
myself that,
what is in Marcus Aurelius that inspires you?
I mean, Marcus Aurelius, if you learn about his life, you learn about the choices, decisions, the restraint, his concern about was he being a good emperor, his focus on doing the right thing, and his constant worrying or understanding that he can't change everything in the world, but he has to try, and that he was fitted for the position to do. And when I thought about myself, in a far more lesser sense than Marcus Aurelius, that I complain about the government not working. I complain about this, but I'm not actively participating to fix it. So I took this that maybe for whatever reason, fate, circumstances, fortune, whatever, decided for me, asked me to
Can
become a
I
set.
add into that? I'm just being devil's advocate here. Someone would say, all right, these positions also come with power, authority, and name, fame, all sorts of things. Are any of those things also part of your calculation or motivation to seek the city position or no?
No, I mean, at the time, my goal was just to do the 6 months and leave. And so I
Mhm.
took it more of a burden. I didn't really look at it as an opportunity. I thought it was going to be a burden, but it was a burden that I had to
Mhm.
carry. And I felt is that I was positioned carefully and potentially able to change and fix some things in the 6 months I had. And you can universally ask individuals what I did for the 6 months. I think I've done a lot of good legislation, a lot of good right sizing. We were during COVID, so it was very difficult. And it's similar to Marcus Aurelius as he was trying to lead the government. The plague was destroying the entire Roman Empire. We had COVID happening. At the same time, I was a volunteer medical personnel for the county. I was testing people for COVID. I was doing that. I was being the
I mean,
councilman.
it's
I
very
was
few,
volunteering.
honestly, very few people I know who have sought inspiration, from a Roman Empire. that, that's quite
So I basically, it's a stoicism, which is like an unbelievable opportunity to read about it. That's the philosophy that Marcus Aurelius believed in. So this is the daily,
okay.
and it's basically how to be a good father using stoicism. So I have a
Tell me, I
copy of that.
mean, read one sentence or one part of this, that you that you think, you always quote or you want to quote to others.
Yeah. So if there's a thing I can talk about, it's this: basically teach them to be particular. And in it, basically, there's a line that says, "I want you to be particular with this man," meaning again, as written, he has to be careful in his criticism, but he should never attack any individual without factual accuracy. So if you want to criticize someone, first think about their perception and their perspective, because those are two different things. And then when you're trying to figure out a
Hmm.
solution, is the goal to hurt them or is the goal to really help them? And I'm a big believer in stoicism.
So it looks
I
like
even tell
this is the art of war version of the Daily Dad, or the Daily Dad version of the art of war.
I mean, it's
That's
I
wonderful.
love like every time when I read meditations back and forth, like I'll have a different perspective reading it and a different understanding of it.
Hmm.
And I really helps me guide about decision making, about focusing on helping people. And to go back, the only I took the second ward council position when they asked me to do it. I never sought for it. I never
Hmm.
advocated. I never participated in political events. I never called someone and say, "Hey, I should be your councilman." Someone gave it to me, and I said, "Then I'm in a unique position to do something." And then after those 6 months were done, and I, did really great legislation. I looked at community concerns. I thought about initiatives. After I was finished, I really thought to myself, like, wow, I can actually apply all these things I studied and learned and preached about. And if I had a position in government, a long-term position, I could actually make a difference.
And now I'm assuming now you are seeking that position full time. How is that going to work with your other responsibility that you're taking upon yourself? And I know that that you're involved in so many community support programs, community initiatives. You're involved in the student initiatives, some which are part of your daily work assignment. And I see that you also work with them after work. Then you're also raising two beautiful girls, and you spend a lot of time with them. And I'm assuming that you are also involved in their education, and you spend time for that too in their overall grooming as a strong independent woman, just like you were raised. I'm pretty sure you were raised very strategically calculated, that your parents wanted you to, they didn't just go by the whim, all right, wherever life takes you kind of a thing. They had a certain design for you. First of all, tell me, if your father sees you now, what advice would he give you now, or would he be saying that he's proud of whatever you've done, or would he give you some advice different? He wanted to see you differently.
You know,
What
I
advice would he give you if your father saw you now?
I think I think my father would give me the same advice he gave me when I was a kid, which is pretty much, you're never going to have enough time in your life. You have to make life into your time. So I agree with you. I do a lot. And I have this conversation with my wife all the time. I'm pretty much on the go doing one thing, going to law school, do my MBA, doing this community group. I'm on the board of directors for multiple different nonprofits, trying to help committee groups, initiatives, homeless initiatives. And, I I think my father would say that he wanted me to live life as much as I can, doing good. And I hope he would be proud of me that when time comes for me to kind of go to the next life as well, and I'm in my sick bed and thinking about, did I do enough? Did I have enough time to accomplish all these things? So I want to be able to say that I hope I did. And I think my father would probably, be really happy that I didn't live an idle life, that I didn't just say put so much into focus about like doing frivolous things and not putting enough focus on meaningful things. And again, I go back to what my father would say is that you're never going to have enough time in your life, but put life into your time. Make every moment count.
And tell me one thing, your wife, would ask you to just leave, don't do it. What is that one thing she won't like you to do?
I think my wife would probably say that, initially when we got married, she was like, you're going to run yourself ragged. But then she's gotten to the point now that, idle hands are a devil's playground, that I need to stay busy. I need to move forward. I need to do stuff and complete things. And, that was one of the hilarious part that I graduated with my MBA in May of 2024. And then I only took about 31 days break until I started law school. So my wife was like, "You're not even going to enjoy the fact that you finished your MBA." I was like, "No, I have to go to my next thing." And now that I finished my law degree on October 15th, I did it a little bit early. I took extra classes in the summer. My wife was saying that, "Are you still doing your doctorate program in January?" So I said, "No, I'm listening to your advice. I'm going to push it back until the summer because I'm running an election now." So now she's like, "Wait, you just replaced one thing with another." And I said, "Yeah, I'm being strategic. Right after I'm done with the election in May, then I'll go back. I'll start the PhD program." So my
Yes.
wife would probably agree initially that I'm doing too
But
much.
and I see, because I was talking to my son the other day, and his New Year resolution is something, and he shared that with me. He says that this year my resolution is that I will stop being perfect, because so much time I spend in thinking about being perfect, in planning about being perfect, that I end up, not doing it. So I'm assuming that because I see all the initiatives that you share with us on Facebook. And sometimes I realize, man, is he doing all of these things the way he wants to do? Or he just goes into them and say, all right, whatever happens, I got to do something. So I think, perfection is the enemy of starting. So do you also sometimes get stymied by the what would people think of me, and people would have to share it, for example, when you came here, and I came here, with all the jacket and shirt and all of that, and you were ready, to go, for your gym, right? So but then you realize, man, no, I need to be a little, I have to do for perfection. So does that delay or slow down the things that you want to do, or you just go ahead and do it, and I don't know if you get 8 hours of sleep, which is required. do you do you get 8 hours of sleep or no?
Unfortunately, no, especially during the dog days of the law school, I was only sleeping about 4 hours. I would put my kids to bed at 8:30. Then, like I have a very strict time with them. So 8:30 they would go to bed, and then I would do homework and readings all the way until possibly, and the latest was 2 o'clock in the morning. But I average about 12 to 1,
Mm.
and then I would go to sleep, wake up at 6 because the kids would wake up around 6 because we put them to bed so early, and then that would be the start of my day. So, lots of soda and fruit juices were keeping me alive. But I go back to the fact of what you said about being trying to be perfect, right? And the philosophy that I go through, and again, it goes back to Stoicism, is that you when you think about the Declaration of Independence, and it says a more perfect union, more perfect doesn't make any sense. More perfect, like what is I mean, what is better than perfect? But
That yeah.
in a philosophical sense, yeah, in a philosophical sense, it's the fact that you try to be better every day. You try to do as much as you can whenever you can. And when
So
I
tell me,
found, if you look at my,
walk me through your calendar. How does that
no,
work? How do you, when you plan your day, do you plan your day a night before? How does that work? Tomorrow, for example, what's on your plate for tomorrow, and how did you plan for it?
yeah, so pretty much what I do is that my phone is my battleground. So I preload text messages. I'll have them in
Okay.
draft, and then because I'm not going to send a text message out at 11 or 12 o'clock. I'm going to wait possibly potentially until the morning. So with my team and staff, that's what I used to do. I used to preload all my text messages, preload all my emails. So I would have everything in draft, and I would wake up in the
And
morning.
don't send them. You don't send them.
Yeah. So I have them preset so the emails will be sent. I'll time them calendar emails. So they'll be sent out exactly during the workday because I do believe in like not bothering staff outside of work hours. I try to follow that as much as I can. They can bother me
And
anytime.
what application do you use, for managing your day? Use Google Calendar, or do you use Slack? What do you use?
So I have six Google profiles, and they're all synced to Google Calendar. So I use that. I used to use a different software, and then I used to actually do everything by paper. So I was telling people it's hilarious. I'm teaching
Hmm.
kids to do programming on robots, doing high technology programs
Hmm.
based on paper.
Hmm.
So I still do paper for task management reasons. But as an example,
Hmm.
so in the morning, I'm sorry, at night, after I put the kids to bed, I'll look at my phone. What text messages do I need to send out to someone? What emails do I need to send out? And then I would review some text messages I sent out to update my calendar. So my Google Calendar synced between 4 to 6 different profiles. My school,
Okay.
schools.org, all this stuff, right? So then I look at my calendar and I look at it as like, okay, this is what I got to do at this time, that time. During my lunch during the workday is when I'm gonna have a at desk lunch so I can get some work done and do this, so then I can get out a little early, hopefully by 6 o'clock instead of
So are you using your Google Calendar for your task management also, or you have some sort of a Kanban kind of a task management program
oh,
application
I use a
also?
yellow book now. I use a yellow pad, a legal yellow pad. So during my MBA program, you know,
Hmm.
it's like I tell people like, I've really downgraded in the sense of like I did everything
So
so
you
digital.
carry actual paper notebook in your hand?
So I have 2. One is my daily task,
Uh-huh.
legally up. That's what I use for notes. That's when I'm like, put down tasks for the day. And then it's almost a tactile or visual like endorphin rush where I'm like, okay, I finished one. What's the next? And then I'll add more because I'm like, oh, I forgot I got to do this and that. So when you see me at the district in my satchel, I have my yellow
Uh-huh.
legal pad. I switched from a white one to a yellow when I got into law school. They're like, we don't use white pads here. But I was like, okay. And then I have a calendar book that is mirrored to what's written on my Google Calendar. So it does seem like it's redundant and almost counterproductive,
Mm.
but I really looked at the fact that this is how I help memory retention, and it gives me an opportunity to say, you know what, actually, I don't think I need to do this. So as I'm looking at my calendar, writing out on my long-term calendar book, which is pretty much maybe I'll fill out 2 weeks at ahead, unless there's a meeting I'm scheduled a month later on. But I put everything in there, and it also includes anything I have to do personally, work-wise, this and that. So my yellow pad will have all the stuff I need to do for school, and then it'll have like, hey, don't forget to call the doctor. Hey, don't forget you have assignment due, this and that. On my calendar, it'll also have the same thing. Your quizzes due here, your tests is due this. So Some people might say that's really messy, that it gives you, it may give you, it may give you a sense of lostness, but I say, no, it's like life is chaos as it is. Marcus Aurelius says this all the time. But if you could try to bring a semblance of a pattern of calmness, it'll try to limit your distractions as much as possible, then you'll be able to move forward. I'm not perfect. Are there times where I made a mistake and missed a meeting or didn't prepare? Of course. But at night, when I reset myself to say, what did I accomplish? What did I look at? I look at the journal, the legal yellow pad. I look at my management journal, and I make sure everything corresponds. And this office here is my war room. That's what I'm always like double checking at night to make sure I'm all set. But if I didn't do that, there would be
That's
no way.
wonderful.
I'm a member of three different nonprofit boards. I'm a religious youth group leader. I do the school district
Hmm.
required. I was going to law school. I was doing all that, and then I had organizations that I was sponsoring and helping. There would be no way I would be able to do all that if I didn't have these three things: my Google Calendar, my task notepad, yellow pad, and my journal.
I think although in terms of the cognitive functioning, they say there's no such thing as multitasking, but I believe these tools that you have created for yourself, and these tools are always idiosyncratic. They are individual to every one person. My tools would work for me only because you develop, these set of tools over a period of time, and they become part of your habits and your routines. And I believe that's what makes your day go fluently. And whatever works for you, I'm pretty sure that's why you're able to manage so many things. I would not say flawlessly, but at least smoothly or fluently. And even if you're able to get more than 50, 60, 70% of your things marked, things to do done, I'm pretty sure that this process that you've set up for yourself is working well for you. All right, now we're coming towards the final quarter of our conversation here. And now we are talking about the position that you're seeking in the city council. Tell me
Yes.
what is wrong, and be a little more specific. What are the things that you see wrong at the city level right now that you think that your contribution can rectify and can you can help improve those things that you want to improve in the city, and be a little more specific.
Oh, absolutely. And I think clearly what's happening in government right now is a lack of empathy, compassion, and the opportunity to provide dignity to individuals living here in the city. We've seen structural financial defects. We've seen a lack of city services. We've seen a coordination at the administration level of both the council, mayor, and I.
But Andre Sayer is there, on Facebook all the time. He's sharing, that he's paving this street, and he's opening up, that park. He's got, this building. He's building new apartments, all of that. From his perspective, it looks like everything is hunky dory.
Yeah, and I'm in a position where I tell individuals that my goal isn't to defame or hurt anyone, right? And I know universally everybody's trying their very best. But at this particular
Mm.
in the history of the city, I found that there is a structural misunderstanding of how we can do things better. And you can't build yourself out of a way to get out of a problem. It needs to be looked at in a holistic lens. Some of the issues that I've seen is that if you ask anybody down the street, they'll tell you that the affordability issue of the city is unbelievable. That individuals can't afford a gallon of milk, can't afford food to feed their kids. Their inability to be able to pay for gas, electric utilities, the rent is increasing, mortgage rates are increasing, just the cost of life. Now, is that a municipal city issue, right? I would contend that there are things that the city can do to fix those things, which is at the city
Can
level.
you can you
Look
name
at
some of those things, because these issues that you talked about, these are primarily national issues at this point,
oh,
not only
yes.
the large city issues. So what would you do to solve some of these problems?
Yeah. So the very first thing is, we have to understand what a council member is able to do. There are plenty of
Mm.
legislators or individuals running for council, and they're saying that they have super president powers to do whatever they want. They can, with a flip of their wrist, they're able to tell the police department to do this without going through the process of government. They're able to change regulations, ordinances, whatnot. We know in the real world that things have a process, they have a procedure that needs to be followed. For myself, running as a council at large candidate for the city of Paterson, the third largest city in the state, the things I want to implement directly is to relook how we can do public safety, hiring class two part-time police officers. If you ask any residents living in the city, they consistently say that the response time that they receive from the police department is lacking, that other surrounding municipalities are able to have a 2 to 3 minute response time, whereas in the city of Paterson, depending on the issue, it could be hours, if not the next day. Now, in that type of situation,
Wow.
yeah, and when we're talking about something as benign as someone blocked their car in front of my driveway, that someone is playing loud music until 2 o'clock in the morning, someone is having a disagreement with their neighbor, they may not be considered super important in the long run, but they are local needs that individuals have that are not being fulfilled. So by having a special police
Mm.
force, which is part-time officers that are given police powers, the city of Paterson is able to say, when we have crime happening, such as shootings, violence, we can send our full-time uniformed police officer to handle that. But then our part-time police force can handle quality of life issues, traffic issues, enforcing to make sure city blocks are staying clean, citing individuals that are not following regular civil matters. This is a way, it's a win-win because the cost of a special police officer is greatly less than the cost of a full-time officer. You don't use that special police officer in a vacuum in a bubble by itself. It's complements what our police officers are doing now. If you ask any police officer, and I have family members that are police officers in Paterson, they're overwhelmed. They're being asked social workers, they're being asked to be nurses, mothers, priests, and they're being told with a very limited
Mm.
to cover an entire city.
But I mean, in order to fund, as I see that you're asking to expand the police force, even if it's part-time, where would the funds come from for that kind of a thing? And if we have funds, and why it hasn't been implemented already, or these funds are not being used properly? Do you think, that,
Yeah.
do you have a solution to raise funds for that kind of a solution?
So when you look at the entire spectrum of all the issues in Paterson, things are not, and they're not disconnected from each other. They're connected. We have to do a better job of getting business ratables to come in. We need to make it easier for businesses to come in. We need to make sure that we're enticing factories, blue collar jobs to be able to come here. We need to make sure that we're working with our educational institutions, creating trade schools, job placement centers. It needs to be a full spectrum, full service philosophy to try to fix the walls of the city. When you do those things, one thing is not going to be enough to fix the entire city, but you need to do all
Mhm.
these things at the same time in a variety of phases. And then in the long run, that's how we're able to solve the issue. The problems of Paterson weren't created overnight. They took decades to manifest itself. Poverty, the war on drugs, the crime rate, the lack of opportunity, the employment level, the deindustrialization, where trade schools, which is a big part of my platform, we need to be able to get individuals graduating from high school or coming overseas as immigrants and get them into jobs quickly. And the only jobs that seem to provide a good salary are boring jobs, quote unquote, plumbing, electricity, welding. We need to create that and also pair it with creating trade unions. Paterson used to have over 15 trade unions that resided here. Now we have zero. All of them have a,
Mm.
and because of that, there's no way for us to galvanize a group of individuals that are trained to get them to bid into big company construction plans, this and that. So it is a long-term plan. But I ask this to the residents of Paterson. We've had situations where we've had too many promises of like, I'm going to fix it in one day or give me this time and that. We need to really take a step back and say, what can we do to fix the entire situation? We're not going to be able to charge our way out of this. We're not going to be able to raise taxes out of this in order to kind of meet the budgetary needs that we have. The only way to do it is to focus on a full spectrum, which is we need to lower fees for business to operate here. We need to work together. And I kind of call it the three legs of the stool, which is the public, the government, the nonprofit, and the private sector have to work in unison. It doesn't say that the private sector here, well, they shouldn't be doing this and that. We need to make sure we bring them in, incorporate them in to say, hey, I have an opportunity here. As an example, Montclair State University built a dorm. It was a public-private partnership. So the construction company built the dorms. They have a 99-year lease, but they built it for the public university because the university wasn't able to come up with the funds on their own. Those are some of the dynamic ideas. I'm not saying directly, but we can do stuff here in Paterson which meets the public expectation, which is, are we doing things here in the city that's going to be helping the people living here? Are we doing things to make it affordable for them, to give them greater access to jobs and education? Are we doing things that it's going to increase their public safety? And are we doing things, in all honesty, are we doing things that are meeting individuals' respect level? I've heard, and as I travel throughout the
So
city the last couple of
if
months,
I ask you the top three solutions, not the problems, because we know the problems. What are the, let's say you get elected, what are the top three initiatives that you will push for with specific recommendations? Top three, just the top three.
top three I would state would be economic development. We need to bring factories, we need to bring companies, we need to bring trade schools to help that. The second one is public safety. We need to hire class two officers and we need to hire social workers. And I truly believe that class two officers, part-time police officers, and social workers to help our mental health trauma that's happening in the city. A person with a hammer will think every problem's a hammer. But we know that a lot of the crime, the underlying foundational issue of crimes that take place is a mental health issue. So we need to hire social workers along
Mm.
with class one officers. And then the third and final one is just the overall aesthetic public development. Is there public infrastructure being done for the city of Paterson? Now, you may have seen that parks are being invested in, but we're not making a real focus on how do we build the infrastructure around the city to be more conducive for people? Is our bus state stops in a correct position? Are there train availabilities? Is our train station being effectively utilized for individuals to go to work and come back? Is the public spaces really being done in a way that is respectful? I've seen, unfortunately, some of the development that's happening. I've seen parks who, unfortunately, maybe goes to the lowest responsible bidder, and then the quality of those parks don't seem to be up to par. And that's just one example.
Hmm.
But when we look into it, the investments in public infrastructure has to take place. An individual should be able to wake up and reasonably be able to go to a grocery store, a fresh grocery store next to them. Reasonably should be able to go to a place of employment. Reasonably should be able to go to a recreation center to unwind, to exercise. These things ensure that we have a happy population living in the city. So when I talk
Of
about the
course.
top three, economic
So,
development, public safety, and public infrastructure, we're not doing the things
and
currently.
I can see your agenda items number 2 and 3 are probably something that you can influence more than your agenda item number 1. That's what I'll be a little bit curious. How would you invite and entice the industries and large scale businesses to come in? I've not seen any large scale business come into the city of Paterson. Yes, there are lots of restaurants, and probably this is now the food hub of New Jersey, or maybe even at some point maybe this will bypass New York, for Middle Eastern food and all of that. But other than that, how and what specific? I mean, let me ask you: can you invite Amazon to come in and invest, in some kind of a warehouse there? Because Amazon warehouses are all over the place. So, what would be some of the industries or companies that you will reach out to and ask them to come to Paterson? And why would they come to Paterson?
Excellent question. So my goal wouldn't be, quote unquote, to reach out to the Amazon and Google of the world and say, hey, you got to come here. We know that there's potential benefits for having industries like that here. But I think what we need to do is focus on the mom and pop and the mid-level organizations. But they're only going to come here if the situation is conducive and safe and it makes business sense for them to come here. So if your business structure fees, if your permit fees, which Patterson has, unfortunately, the notoriety of having the worst permit process in northern New Jersey, where it will take you months, if not years, to get approval to build a shed behind your back of your house. It has become that horrible.
Hmm.
That's why individuals are doing it without permits. Look up throughout the city, businesses are operating where whatever permits they do have to get, they'll get, but others are disregarding because there's no callback, there's no reference, there's no coordination, and because the lack of staff, the antiquated information technology that they're using. I use this example of Englewood Cliffs. Gilman Choudhury, the business administrator. The town has about 5,000 people, but within 3 days, which beats his 5 business day philosophy, he was able to get Samsung to do all their paperwork and permits done within 3 days to be able to move their Northern American regional headquarters there. It is
Hmm.
possible. It is doable. But the only reason why they came was because the cities was already conducive to businesses. Unilever had left because they wanted to consolidate their operations. But because the city was already business friendly and had unbelievable safety, economic development, had recreational centers, had the people were happy with the government, those companies like that were able to come in. Now, is Patterson in a position right now for that to happen? No, not at all. But in a decade or two is a possibility if we're able to do the baby steps first. Before we learn how to run, we have to learn how to crawl. And what's happening in the city is that yes, we're investing in our food infrastructure. I truly enjoy the fact that we have a variety of different eateries here, but that's not going to be sustainable on itself to bring economic development. You have to bring the small level micro factories. You have to bring mom and pop stores that someday might become a mid-size or top tier. Every company that was here throughout the world started out of a garage or a small storefront. So one of these mom and pop companies may be able to do that. But my goal isn't to get the pie in the sky. My goal is to get practical, real work done. And the real work done is to say factories that do basic microchip producing, garments, food packaging, smaller scale ones that we can bring here that will bring ratables. But at the same token, they will only come if we provide them proper security, proper paperwork process, and an opportunity for
Of
them to
course.
hire direct Madison residents. No one's going to come here now. Take a risk. And I had this conversation with a company, and I'm not going to explain their name. They were given the false promise that if they bring their operations away from Central Jersey to here, and it was a company that only had about 20 to 30 workers, but it was a mid-size. I would consider it, the bottom tier of a mid-sized company. Within about seven
Hmm.
months, their factories were burglarized, their equipment was damaged, their staff members that maybe the majority actually came from Patterson were refusing to show up because the environment wasn't safe. Their cars were being
Hmm.
vandalized. So the company
That's
decided,
crazy.
we're done, we're leaving because we were told by the business office, the UEZ office and that if we just have to pick up the phone and they will make sure to help us to Sure, police are there. Cleaning is done. There were days where their streets weren't cleaned. Snow was packed up on the road, so when they had trucks coming in, they couldn't even move it. They had to hire someone to work on their public streets.
Hmm.
So company
That
left.
fundamental and government inefficiency.
Why would you invest in the
Uh,
city, put a business,
Absolutely.
hire people, if you felt as if the city wasn't going to do its end of the bargain? And that's the problem that we have here. Until we fix that, you're not going to be able to get mid-level income individuals coming here. You're not going to be able to get these high-level companies coming here if they see that the governance of Paterson is on the news for its dysfunction. It's on the news for its
Mhm.
inability to go through procedure. It's on the news for the multiple lawsuits that are happening. And I think that's the problem with the current council members that we do have. Again, nothing against them directly, but if they have no experience on running businesses, managing, understanding legislation, having a background in business or background in law, they're making interpretations based on ChatGPT, which I found out. A lot of the council members are using that AI software to even make legislation, which is insane. But this is the level of governance we have for a city that is over 200,000 people living here. What kind of governance do you want? My sister-in-law is a councilwoman in Franklin Township. Their
Mhm.
council is a collection of doctors, lawyers, engineers. The mayor is a neurosurgeon, and their entire focus is how can we keep the affordability, the best land use, the
And actually,
safety with the
because
tech.
they are invested in the community, and whatever designing or they are planning for their city is based on their personal investment in those places. And Gilman, I believe that these ideas, all the best for you. I'm pretty sure that we need people who have not only great aspirations, they have the specific remedies or specific solutions which are doable. Like you said, it's doable. If it's doable, then all you need beyond that, is naturally the wherewithal to do that. But like you said, these, somebody. I'm not, discounting the value of ChatGPT and all of that, but that is only as a brainstorming tool, not as a tool to solve your problems. I want to end this on a high note, on a note of a great tribute to someone I know you owe your life to. You were very close to your mother, who
Yes.
recently passed away. Tell me some of the sacrifices she made while raising you here in the city and in raising you to the man that you have become. Tell me about the sacrifices she went through to do all of that.
Well, I my mom was an amazing woman. She worked at a factory. She was a factory worker herself, building
Hmm.
perfume glass bottles. She worked the night shift, third shift, and she would wake up, she'd make us breakfast, get us ready
Here in Paterson.
in Paterson, and we would come back from school, she would feed us, take care of us, and then around 8, 9 o'clock, she would leave for her job. And my mom did this for over years, and s I saw how tired she would be, but she would only sleep for a couple hours, and then she would go on and do everything, and she would take care of me. There's 5 siblings, there's 5 of us in the family, she would take care of all of us. If there was anything that I learned from my mom, it's the same thing that my dad would say, that you're never gonna have enough time in your life, but make life in your time, and she was a superwoman. She did all these things and never complained. She would go to work sick, she would take care of us, injured. She would take care of the household, cook all the food, and then go to work as a factory worker for 8 hours a day, sometimes 10 when she had. And my mom never complained one bit. She real old world mentality when it came down to that. But we never thought, like, as children, I never, why she was able to do all that stuff. But as I got older, I was like, how did my mom accomplish half these things? And I'm fortunate that the person I am today is because of the sacrifices of my mom, the hardships of my dad. But my mom, I was really lucky to have her, and I appreciated, and I wish I appreciated more. Which, and it's one of the reasons why I work so hard for my own children, and for the community, for the city, is because I want to make sure that I do everything I can. My mom could have given up anytime she wanted to, and she didn't. She kept on pushing forward, she kept on going through hardships. She really lived the stoics. She did things without complaint, and that's what true stoicism is, and that's what my mom did, and that's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards that philosophy more so after the passing of my mom when I was really lost.
You're talking about mm, your mother's schedule. I'm pretty sure that she, whatever she did, that she must be proud of you, the way you have become at this point. And you were telling that she would work for so many hours a day, and I'm pretty sure, like many mothers, she also gave her share of food to you or to one of your brothers or sisters.
Yeah. We didn't know how poor we were because we were surrounded by love, and that's what I usually tell, that we were rich in love. We lacked a lot of resources, a lot of amenities that other families may have taken for granted. You know, growing up on the Fourth Ward, we benefited from having free lunch. We been the school free lunch program, church donations that were given that my mom was able to get for us, and her desire to work was to ensure that we didn't suffer, but we didn't realize we were poor because of that, and
See
all
this, the children never realize, that the struggles their parents go through because they feel like, they have given them everything.
yeah,
But what they realize only, and sometimes, growing up, you never realize that there are things that you don't have. You feel like you have everything. And that's a good thing. And that's probably a human mechanism for survival. That and I often give example of kids playing soccer in the middle of bombs falling in Iraq, in Baghdad, in Gaza, and all of those places. Kids, the life still continues for them. Childhood is a testimony of resilience. Kids don't realize, and they shouldn't realize, the
absolutely.
struggles their parents go through. And I'm pretty sure that it because of that now you realize, and you have all the realization and the regard for the struggles she has gone through, because she didn't let you feel like that you didn't have anything. You felt like you had everything, right?
She
So
protected us from the harsh of poverty, basically, and I think I go back to this one conversation I had with my friend, and he told me that the holidays, like, when he looked back, the only reason why the holidays as a kid seemed so magical and worthwhile was because of his parents. And now
there
being an
you go.
individual, he realized that it wasn't the stuff we got because we barely got anything, but what was so magical about holidays and birthdays was because of our parents. They made it. And as you become a parent yourself, you really, really start regretting how you may have behaved as a kid or wanting more or eating more. And you hope and pray that, that your mom or your parents in general will really, really, really know that we did appreciate everything. And
Yes. So, Gilman, I really had a pleasure. This was a joy talking to you. I've known you for years, but I'm pretty sure we never knew this side of your story. And I kept this, these personal moments for this kind of interview, so that people could, so the people know when I know you. That's when people know this side of story. And I'm pretty sure many of your constituents, many of the people whose vote you'd be seeking, they don't know this side of your story. So we have covered a lot of ground here, and I really thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best for your big endeavor. And I'm sure that the city will benefit from your passion, from your intentions, and from your actions. I've seen you as a doer, as a go-getter, and I'm pretty sure that your constituents, they will benefit from you as a person. So thank you very much, and all the best.
thank you, doctor. It was really great talking to you. And thank you for the opportunity to explain who I am and a little bit of my platform. Thank you.